Now we're going to put some anti-seize compound on this side of the axle just prior to installing the brake panel. Next to go on is going to be the brake panel. And what I've done here is I've put a little bit of grease inside the lip of the seal where it's going to run on the brake drum once we install it. And then here on the back side, I'm going to put just a little bit in this O-ring groove here where there's a little sealing O-ring to kind of help hold it in place while we install it onto the axle. There you go. Just make sure you get down in the groove all the way. Just like that. And we'll go ahead and slide that on. Next we'll reattach the vent hose, just like that. Then we'll go ahead and put the cables in their holders. One for the foot brake always goes on the bottom. One for the hand brake always goes on the top. And we'll put the little boots back over the ends of those metal ends. Seal that lubricant in there that we squirted in them earlier. Right. Next going is going to be the brake cam. And I've already smeared a little bit of grease on that where it's going to go into the brake panel at. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some grease on the end of a small screwdriver, and I'm going to put that in there and kind of roll that around a little bit to pack a little extra grease in the brake panel, just like that. Then we'll take the brake cam, install it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rag and I'm going to wipe off any excess grease that was squeezed out. So that way we don't, you don't want to get none of that grease on your brake shoes. Just like that. It's working good. And now I'm going to put just a very, very tiny, just a very, very light dab of anti-seize compound on that brake cam. Now since anti-seize compound is high temperature, it's pretty much going to stay there. You won't have to worry about it getting hot and flowing like grease will. That way it'll give those brake shoes a little bit of something to ride on, and that won't come off of there. I've got the springs pre-assembled onto the shoes, and one little note, when you're handling brake shoes, be sure that your hands are real clean. You don't have any grease or oil on your hands, because if that contaminates that lining, it'll make your brakes squeal and glaze them over, and they just don't work very well. So be sure to try to keep these as clean as possible when you're handling them. There we go. What I'm doing here is I'm just kind of taking a piece of emery cloth and I'm just kind of lightly sanding that on the inside where the shoes are going to run up against it, just to kind of knock the glaze off of it, make sure there's not any nicks or burrs on there that damage those linings. Just like that. This drum here is in really good shape. I've seen a lot of these where they've been in a lot of water, and you take the drum off and all of this steel lining in here would just be really rusty. Motorcycle and ATV brake drums, they cannot be turned like you can a car drum. So you can't chuck them up in a lathe or something and skin them down and get you some good metal. I've tried to do that in the past, a long time ago, and what'll happen is basically the brake cam will over center, because it has to push the brake shoes so far apart that it will actually over center, and it'll lock the brakes up, and that's not good. About the only way that you can really remove a really bad buildup of rust off one of these brake drums without damaging it is to use either a sandblaster, or if you have someone that has a bead blast cabinet where they actually use glass beads, it'll actually knock all that rust out of there, but it doesn't actually remove any metal. And if the drum's not pitted up too bad, you can usually salvage them that way. But otherwise, if it's really bad, just chunk it and get you another one, because it's not worth the effort trying to turn them. Okay, so let's go ahead and install this one. Of course, we've got our anti-seize compound on the splines, on the axle, and then I'll also put a little bit inside the drum splines themselves. So let's go ahead and slide this on. Now we're getting ready to install our brake hardware, the brake arm, and all the cables and adjusters. Now, one thing I want to zoom in here and show you right quick is on the end of this spline on this brake cam, there's a punch mark. That punch mark always needs to be facing towards the rear. And the reason being is the splines on that thing, you can see it's got a wide spline right here. What that's for is you have a little wear indicator arm that has a little pointer that it points to up here that tells you when your brakes have reached their safe wear limit. And so it has to be in that direction. Otherwise, if you got it on the other side, none of this stuff will spline on there because the splines are timed to go with this wide spline on this cam here. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to install our little felt dust seal. I'm going to just smear a little grease on that. We'll set that in there. Just like that. Okay. The next piece to go on is going to be our return spring. It goes on and it's got a little pin, fits in a little hole right there on the brake panel, just like that. Okay. Next will be our wear indicator. There again, it's got a wide spline marker that fits on that, just like that. Also, your brake arm itself has a dot on it that is supposed to line up with a dot on the brake cam. Now, one of the reasons why I like to go ahead and leave the brake drum off of this, also while I'm doing this step, as you see while I'm trying to put that on there, the brake cam can push in. Leave that brake drum cover off so that way you can reach in here from the other side and push that out. You can hold it out while you install your brake arm. Just be sure and hook it in spring, then spline it up there and take a look at it and see if you got your dots lined up. If not, spline it on up there a little bit more. Now, what you can do here, if you have a drum that's got some wear in it, if you line those dots up like they're supposed to be, what you may find is that you have very little adjustment left on your cables once you attach everything and go to adjust your brakes up. If that be the case, then what you can do is you can actually take this thing and back it off a spline or so to the point where you can actually get some good adjustment on it. That's why I always like to do this after I've installed the brake drum. That way I can get all this done at one time and not have to take the brake drum cover back off and fight with this cam trying to get it splined onto this arm. Got all of our brake hardware installed now. Greased all of the ends of the cables where the threaded adjusters go and the springs and the little rollers. Put everything in place, got all the cables adjusted correctly. And I'm going to zoom in here and show you this because as it turned out, when I tried to line those up dot to dot, I didn't have real good adjustment on my cables. And as you can see here, I'm one spline back. And what that did is, as you can see from the wing nuts here, I've still got plenty of adjustment left on the cables. And I've got the proper amount of free play on it. So that works like it's supposed to. So we're good to go. So now we'll go ahead and get ready to reinstall the brake drum cover. Okay, I got our drum seal here, and what I'm doing is I'm just putting a little light coating of grease on the outside of it to help facilitate installing it. We're just going to press this in by hand. Just push it down till it bottoms out. We'll go ahead and install the drum cover.